happy Friday, and thanks for tuning in to radiofreerhinecliff.org. In this show in particular, correct me if I'm Norm, I'm your host, Norm, and I'm thrilled to be here today with Dana Colleen Peterson, who is mixing up some cocktails for us right now. How's that going, Dana? What is this, Dana? What are you making?
This is so typical for me, Norm, because I'm not a mixologist. I'm not good at this. I generally, if I've made a gin and tonic, that's a lot for me.
Yeah. Well, what is this? It looks gorgeous, and the glass is rimmed with coconut. It looks like toasted coconut.
Yeah. So I was like, am I going to be just like some miscreant wasp who shows up with like some low grade gin and tonic? I was like, no, I'm going to make the drink I like, but I don't know how to make drinks. And there's a bar in South Carolina in Folly Beach, and they have a drink called the Eric Estrada, and it's a heavily spiced pina colada.
With chips in it?
Served, yes, with chips of coconut and a little splash of grenadine and amaretto sour. And so I tried to recreate it, but I'm not a mixologist, and I'm terrible in the kitchen. So this is really a beautiful introduction to me. You've got a melted gross ball cocktail, just like not appetizing, but I know out of politeness you're going to drink it, and I'm going to let you.
Oh, yeah.
So that's where we are.
All right, good. Well, thank you so much for going to all that trouble. And I love the name of the Eric Estrada, that was the guy in Chips, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And what was his partner's name? The other actor. There were two of them.
You've gone beyond. I'm at the level where I just know the kitsch value of a drink being called the Eric Estrada, but I have no baseline memories that are stirred up.
And he's still around. I think I see him around from time to time in celebrity events and roasts or whatever.
And I think he was on C-Lab or something. I think they had
C-Lab.
That one. That was great.
Yeah. All right. Well, now you got to make yours, right? You got one more to make.
I got two more to make because
two more.
I would never ignore a producer sitting here, but I can multitask, and maybe you'll even get better answers out of me if I'm trying to create something.
Because it'll be like a truth serum sort of thing.
For sure.
Yeah. So you said something disparaging earlier about wasps and gin and tonics, I think. Is that, are you going to stick with that?
That's how I self-identify. That was a cell phone.
As a wasp. All right. Now, and I see, I looked you up there on LinkedIn and got some information. You went to a place called Choate Rosemary Hall.
I did do.
Now, is that a waspy place? Sure.
I'm sure they spend a lot of money trying to not be just that, and there were plenty of fantastic people brought in from all over the world. But
And what is this place exactly, Choate? It's
just a boarding school. It's just one of those ones
in Connecticut.
Yeah.
Which is a fine place to be a wasp.
It is. It's where our people are most at home. That's where we
We're
swarm.
the wasp. I love that.
As one does.
Yeah, I guess technically I'm a wasp, though I don't really identify that way too often.
Most of us don't. I think it would be a useful pejorative that should be brought back too. I mean, people get so up in arms about Karen, but I think wasp conveys something else that's kind of important.
Karen is such a good one. When I was so excited when the kids taught me what a Karen was. And then, once you start, the uniqueness factor, you start seeing them everywhere. It's like, oh, wow, now I know what a Karen is. And, oh, wow, there's another one. So it's sort of a creamy colored cocktail here. And it is cold.
And it's melted quite a bit. And I think some of the icy stuff is probably still in the cooler. So you guys are probably getting like a triple dose here. So
the iced stuff. So it was blended, and it's like a milkshake consistency.
It was like a true pina colada frozen cocktail consistency at my house. But then when I brought it in my car with my kids screaming and whatnot in the backseat.
How old are the kids?
Jack is 10 and Blaze is 7, and they're starting school. They started school at Chancellor last year.
Jack and Blaze? Wow.
Blaze like Blaise Pascal, not like...
Oh, okay. Blaise.
It's a real good litmus test to the people who get real excited about his name in the wrong way.
Blaze. Yeah, I didn't even think of that for some reason. That's a good sound right there.
That's the trickly sound.
There we go. There's the cocktail going into the glass.
I would say the ratio of rum to pineapple and coconut for all of us is completely wrong. So,
you think we're all getting a different ratio?
I think we're all getting more than we should get.
So there you go. So this is my one drink a week. I've gone on the wagon mostly, and this is it. So
I was like not going to bring a drink, but then I talked to Lydia Slaby, and she was like, they ridiculed me the whole time for failing to bring a cocktail.
yeah.
So I really felt the level.
Well, I was not on the wagon back then, so I was a mean drunk, So it's like, Lydia, what's your problem? I hate you. We had a chant going about hating Lydia for not bringing it.
Love Lydia.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for look. You got a half a glass. We all got like 2/3 of a glass. Cheers.
Cheers.
Here's to the Eric Estrada, and here's to my guest Dana Colleen Peterson, the most fabulous wasp in all of Rhinecliff.
I think the competition's too steep. I think the real winners don't even play.
Oh, this is good.
Wow, that's super yummy.
The first sticky cocktail I ever loved.
Excellent.
That is hilarious. And so the glass was rolled in what, like honey or
That's maple syrup.
maple syrup?
And then toasted a mix of organic unsweetened coconut and then garbage grocery store sweetened coconut that I toasted. Then a splash of grenadine. And then in there we've got the Bon Appetit perfect pina colada mix, but then with cinnamon, allspice, and cloves and Angostura citrus bitters.
Wow. Well, spectacular.
Thanks.
All right, where were we? Oh, right, we were in Connecticut, where the wasps are comfortable and so happy. And eventually, you left school there, the boarding school, Choate Rosemary Hall.
They do make people leave eventually, for most people.
They do. Yeah, I'll bet there's some people who are sort of like on a 5 or so year plan.
Actually, I grew up in central Pennsylvania. I grew up in kind of backwoods country near to Penn State. And there was one kid who came to do a PG year, that's post-grad, to play football or something. And he came from the big town in my valley. And I was from the little backwoods town where they made fun of us for being rednecks and hicks, the kids from the big town. So he showed up. But he had not managed to rid himself of like the central Pennsylvania dialect. So it's amazing to be in a boarding school and someone comes up and with full like Mayor of Easttown meets Pittsburgh, whatever that accent is. Like, oh, there's the hick, to me. And people are like, who is that guy? Do you know him? I'm like, I've never seen him before.
All right, can you do the accent?
No, I'm little things. Like I still say milk sometimes instead of milk.
Well, that's what I say. I mean, that's what it is, milk.
Right. Woof instead of wolf. And there are other things that I'd have to really try hard for a long time to bring up something serviceable.
And once upon a time, did you try hard to leave that accent behind?
My parents didn't have it because they weren't from there. They were from Erie, which is really close to kind of Ohio is the neutral accent for America, and Erie shares that for the most part. So
Ohio's neutral enough. I'm from Ohio, but I do say milk. Mm-hmm. And other people, I don't know even how they pronounce it. Milk?
Yeah, like what is that?
Yeah, no, that's dumb.
I'd like some milk, please.
And so what was the name of this tiny town in central Pennsylvania?
Bellefonte.
Bellefonte? Mm-hmm. And what was the valley? You said
Happy Valley. If you've ever watched a Penn State game, the camera pans and you see this glorious little valley of Americana kind of frozen in time. Definitely frozen in time. So.
Wow. And are your folks still there?
My dad and stepmom are, and my mom and stepdad are down in Charleston, where the Low Life bar provided me this delicious cocktail.
Well, shout out to the bar. What's it called?
Low Life.
Low Life.
Yeah, Low Life. And it's related to Mother's Ruin in Brooklyn.
Mother's Ruin?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Related like same owners or cousins or brothers somehow.
You're going deeper than I literally found that out while I was trying to find the recipe.
Right. They've got the same sort of like volume card that you stamp when you get a drink there. Wow. So you spent 4 years there in Connecticut, and then what happened?
And I went to Chicago.
Chicago.
South Side. And, did my time there, and it was fantastic.
South Central Chicago. That's where the University of Chicago is? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And how in the world did you choose that? Coming from Pennsylvania via Connecticut.
It was really weird. I went to boarding school a bit late. And so, all the other kids had been there for quite some time and kind of had their ducks in a row. And going into the college process, I only had 1 year before I had to go into that. And I screwed up. I kind of only applied to Penn State where I could go for free, and then like 3 Ivies. And then my guidance counselor was like, you have to have something else in there that's not an Ivy or Penn State. And so she threw on Chicago, and then I didn't get into the Ivies. And then, I would rather killed myself than go back to Happy Valley. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll go to Chicago. But then I was so sad because I didn't want to go to Chicago either. that the last minute I was like, is there anywhere else I could go? And I did a last minute like faxed application to St. Andrews in Scotland. And then they let me in immediately. But then I was like, ew, if they would take me that quickly, I'm not going.
St. Andrews University, like near the golf course outside of Edinburgh? And why? How did they come on your radar?
Again, it was like, who will just take an American student at the last minute? And my guidance counselor was like, look, they don't, no one pays tuition over there because of the way their education system works.
Right.
So if you're paying full bill, let's just call them and see if they'll take your money.
And plus, being a WASP, you're probably like a 4 or 5 handicap on the golf course, right?
I'm not like a credentialed WASP. I'm not like old school hardcore WASP. I'm an aspirant, which as soon as you want it, you can't have it.
So you're like a 14 handicap on the golf course. Yeah. Well, so you went to Chicago. Did you know what you wanted to study?
Yeah. English language and literature, and I studied with David Bevington. He was my thesis advisor, and he was fantastic. And he and Nick Ruddle team taught this Shakespeare class that was just ridiculous and amazing. And
you loved it.
Oh, I loved it. I loved every minute of it.
So English language and literature, that's 2 things. And what do English language studies? So is it like grammar or etymology
I wish that's sadly needed in America at all levels. But no, it was. I had a history of the English language with Ingrid Rowland, who was, she was batty, and I mean that in the best possible way. Like, she just had this long, straight brown ponytail that went like to her waist, and she thought that was cool. And I was like, oh, I love that she's committed to this. She's doing that. And she also was a Latinist, and she taught Latin to David Bowie and Iman's kids. And so she would always drop here's this giant nerd with like this crazy ponytail who's a Latinist and a history of the English language scholar. And all the time she's talking about David Bowie and his parties. I loved her. She was great.
Huh. So the English language studies consist of?
Just like, I mean, this is not a thing that I still know or do, but it would be like how language kind of branched out and split over time. And,
okay. Gotcha. Didn't somebody write Bill Bryson or somebody wrote a big book about the history of? Oh,
I'm sure there are many. So
pop up, and so do you keep up with those things? But you keep up with the literature part.
Yeah. I mean, I was going through a thing for a while where I was trying to read in order and wouldn't read new books until I got. And then at some point I was like, you jerk, you're not you're not able to click off an entire decade or a century. Just read what you want. But yeah, for a long time I was very snobby in particular about my literature.
And you would read things. So you started at some point, John Donne or wherever, and you were only reading things in chronological order.
Well, whatever I had to read for class, I would. But I just was very snobby about not reading anyone who was alive. And I would, I thought I was really cool for having that role.
And what bursted through that snobbery?
I went back to a book.
Please say Danielle Steele or something.
No. Yeah, I don't know. I kind of went back to Tim O'Brien's In the Lake of the Woods. And, he wrote Going After Cachado, which is, kind of... There's no one book that's like the Vietnam literature piece that everyone reads, but that's one a lot of people read. And I didn't like that, but I read some of his other stuff. And I don't know, I loved In the Lake of the Woods. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back and read some more living people. So I've started on that.
And I got to ask, what are you reading now?
Oh, well, I'm failing at the Peviar Volkansky translation of War and Peace, because before I had the Garnett and I went to pick it back up during the pandemic and I couldn't find it anywhere. And then I had some stupid Barnes and Noble, who knows who did that. It was not clear. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to go patronize Oblong. I'm going to get myself a Peviar Volkansky translation. And that's what
it's my favorite translation of War and Peace. I'm kidding. I know nothing about it.
And I'm also reading, I just finished John le Carré's Silverview, and that's his only posthumous one, but I've read all his stuff while he was alive, so there we go.
Oh, nice. Look at you.
That's fun.
Like literary tramp. And so do you write? Did you ever have aspirations as a young student, or do you now?
I sure did, and I sure do, Norm.
Oh, yeah. Tell me all about it.
No, I've always considered myself a writer, first and foremost, who just had a day job. And I wrote a very trashy like thriller novel a couple years ago that my husband made me publish it on Amazon Kindle because he's like, you spend so much time on it, you've got to put it out there.
Good for him.
And I was like, oh, it's garbage. I don't want it out there. So that lives out there somewhere.
And what's it called?
No, I'm not telling you. And I'm not. No, it's
pseudonym. What's your pseudonym?
Nope. I have a new book that I just finished.
Right.
And
there is no pseudonym. Amazon, Dana Colleen Peterson.
No, it's not. I'm still. I'm gonna, have to send it out and find a developmental editor and do all that stuff.
And what's the new one?
It's called Interregnum because I'm an insufferable snob, and so
incredible. Interregnum. Now, this word I learned, I don't know, like 5 years ago, and then I've seen all of a sudden the same thing. It's everywhere, and now here you are popping it up on this show.
I would be very curious to know what the everywhere is that you're talking about that you've heard.
Well, one other place. But it was new to me, like not that long ago. And then I think this year I met somebody, they were doing a movie or something called that. And I said, oh, well, interesting.
Oh, wow. I'll have to look into that. That'll be very curious. I very much like the 90s, as you know, from my hit radio show and Radio Free Bryan.
The 1890s?
Hot 90s at 9, at 8.
Oh, the 1990s.
Yeah, the 1990s.
Huh. And, well, how did that happen? When did you graduate Chicago?
01, and I was Choate 97.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So
90s were your sort of high school years.
Yeah, high school undergrad for the most part. Yeah. So it was. So I got to thinking about God, what we could have had. Like the Berlin Wall goes down, we could have stepped naturally into this position of like leadership in peace and prosperity, and then 11 years later, the planes hit the towers. Like, what? How did we lose what we could have had in that decade? And was it really that good? Am I overly glossing with nostalgia what the 90s could have been? So
in 89 or 90, whenever the wall was going down, probably both of them.
November 89, I think.
Okay, November 89. You were thinking those thoughts? How old were you? You were 12 or something at that point.
Oh, yeah. No, I wasn't thinking that at that time.
I see.
Definitely when I was going to college, I wrote a book, and it was terrible. I didn't even finish it. It was terrible. But the whole driving premise, my idea was like, we're living post-history, and there's nothing left. There's no heroism for our generation. There's no call to action. And what happens in this utopian future where, history's over? What will we do with ourselves? So I was really wrong at the time about what was going to happen.
Do you still think we're living post-history, or it's even possible to live post-history?
Oh, I mean, certainly not. I think I was talking to a friend of mine many years ago, and his grandparents were in the camps and were survivors. And he said the worst curse they could level at anyone was, may you live in interesting times.
Oh, right.
And I think we're all living in some interesting times right now. So we're certainly not post-history. We're in it. We're in the mix right now. We're in the trenches.
Right.
And I'm so curious. The one thing, as I've done this project, I've kind of realized how hard it is to call something in the moment for what it is and how important it is and what role it will play. And context is so important. And you're never going to have context until you've, done 10 years of reflecting. And so I'm so curious, what will we look back on this period as?
Well, what do you think? I got to ask now. What you can have a drink of that. I'm sorry to keep asking questions, but Matty pays me the big bucks by the question, so I need to
I don't get paid for my show. Do you get paid for your show?
Oh yeah, yeah. I get $1,500 an episode.
You're a woman, apparently. You don't pay them the same.
Yeah. You should be making 67% of what I'm making for doing the same job.
That's the only reason I was asking.
Yeah. Oh, good.
That's right. That's the magic of zeros.
Multiplying by zeros easy for the boss of this place. Hey, Labor Day's coming up. We should talk about sort of forming a union or something.
Good point.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Let's talk later.
We'll talk offline.
Yeah. So what do you think it's going to be from this era apart from... No, I'm not going to say apart from. What do you think it's going to be?
One of the things that keeps coming to mind is, you watch movies where people travel through time and they're so concerned about, okay, if you go back in time, don't disturb anything because everything will be absolutely changed and you'll come back and it'll be unrecognizable. Biff Tannen will run Hill Valley, whatever. And yet, everything you do today, you never assume there's any value to any of these efforts you might make because it's so impossible and I couldn't change anything. There's no thing I could do that would change things. I think, as we always do, anytime we look back, we'll be like, oh, if only I had realized how much opportunity there still was then to make things better. I think climate change is, the undeniable challenge for our generation, the younger generation. And I think, right now it can seem so disheartening and impossible. And I think there will be a day when we will look back with nostalgia and think, if only we had worked harder then when we could have done something.
Yeah, it's kind of now looking back at 30 years ago. I mean, people have been sounding the alarm about climate change for a long, long time. So, what else? Let's stick with this for a second. What else do you think that, in 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now, we'll look back on right now and think, oh, yeah, we should have known that was a big, huge thing? Or just what do you think is going to be written into the history books from this era?
I think I'm a little bit less stressed about the Supreme Court's antics than maybe I should be. I always see the judicial branch as... The judiciary is always the most revanchist of all the branches, and its authority was built up very carefully and slowly with kind of very conservative decisions that reaffirmed the current state of the law or what people actually wanted the answer to be. And, it wasn't always 9 people. It wasn't always just, it wasn't always, confirmed the same way. And right now we take this very this is set in stone. This is the way that it has to be. This is the way it's always been. I think the thing that's weirdest to me is how activist the court has suddenly become. And I think that will stand out as kind of for, legal historians will stand out as a moment where, the court kind of had some issues. But frankly, in 2000, Bush v. Gore, which was argued by Ted Olson from Gibson Dunn, where I worked, that was a big, weird thing, too. That was a really political moment, and they could have denied cert, and they could have said, we're not going to do this. You go ahead and play it out. And I think it always read as a blatantly political maneuver. So I think we've been in a period where the court appears very politicized for a while now. And just like the fangirling with, RBG and the I dissent caller, I kind of feel like law should be boring. Law should be the kind of thing that, I don't want to say it should be like a mass in Latin where most people don't understand it, but it's weird to me how there are fangirls for RBG or, Scalia. It was so weird to me how conservatives would hold up oh, it's prose, and they'd spit out some little line from something. And I'm like, that's hot garbage. That's not even good writing. It's just, it's just remarkable for the fact that it's slightly less formal than the rest of his opinion, So it's weird to me that we're in this era where SCOTUS is, something that ordinary people care deeply about, because it kind of should be something that's just kind of refining and keeping the boat on course that legal scholars are more upset about than ordinary people.
Right.
So that's something that stands out to me. I think even when Marbury v. Madison came out, I doubt anybody in, this fledgling country gave a shit about SCOTUS at that point. That was a pretty big one. So, that's weird to me. Obviously, Trumpism, it's... sometimes I sit there and I'm like, oh, what part of a fascist decline are we in with this kind of takeover of one of two parties? Is this post-beer hall putsch? What part are we in?
Right.
And I'm so curious. I don't know how this is all going to shake out. So that's very curious for me. And I think it definitely will change this realignment that has been happening as people are kind of being forced to switch parties and kind of more extreme people are brought into the fold. In one way, it's a very Trumpist now thing. In other ways, it's a trend that started with Karl Rove going out and, flyering cars at mega churches to kind of change the conversation and bring evangelicals in as a stronghold that Republicans could always rely on with like one issue, you know. So these are you know, continuity and change, as your high school social studies textbook would urge you to consider the world.
So you bring up Karl Rove and like Newt Gingrich and all this stuff. Do you think that there's a counterbalancing movement on the left of people doing that kind of stuff, or do you see it as sort of a nascent thing popping up now?
You know, I think I sometimes can't watch what kind of like far left stuff is doing, because it's like watching a train wreck, and it upsets me. You know,
Example.
Well, look, in this most recent primary, my good friend Jamie Cheney was running for the Democratic nomination for NY19, the new NY19. As you know, there was this redistricting piece that just happened, and she's very centrist, and she has kind of a very readily available coalition that can kind of reach across and pull people over. She was polling well with Republican women. She was polling well with farmers. And if NY19 goes to vote tomorrow and everyone votes and they vote on party lines, that's going to be a red seat in Congress. And, kind of at the last minute, some far left dark PAC money came in and did some attack ads. I think they actually accused her of wanting to arm teachers or just something absurd. And basically it was like, you know, she's a gun owner. Well, you know what? They own Falcons Fields. They own a cattle farm. You're going to own some guns if you own a cattle farm.
Yeah.
And I just don't know how in NY19, which stretches across this huge swath of very, very red farms as you drive through and you see all the Trump signs, I don't know how you run an ad that makes enemies out of a huge chunk of that populace. And, you know, that's kind of that far left dark PAC spending money. And it makes me nervous.
And was that behind a particular candidate?
Yeah, her challenger, who I won't mention him because he's going to be running against Molinaro, and I will obviously be voting for him. So I don't want to say a negative thing about support for him at this point, because I'm a good team player, but not all Dems are all the time.
All right, and you mentioned SCOTUS earlier and lots of sort of legal stuff. And I happen to know that you went to law school after Chicago. You went on to law school somewhere. And before we get into that, how did you decide, coming out of sort of being an English language and literature major, that you wanted to do that?
Oh my God. Well, no, I didn't want to go to law school. I kind of tripped and fell and ended up there. I graduated in 2001, which was before it was the year that, you know, the towers went down. It was the tail end of
May 2001. So.
Right. It was the tail end of the .com bubble. And so, you know, like I was going and interviewing, and Chicago has a wonderful liberal arts side, but it also has a really econ, you know, free market vein. And so, you know, BCG and McKinsey and all of those places kind of pull managerial consultants out of there left and right from every single major. And I was going for that. But then the .com bubble burst, and they dropped all the interviews, and some of my friends had already signed on crazy apartments because they thought they were getting this amazing job. And then they got some like $20,000 breakup walk away money or something, which doesn't help if you've just bought an apartment on Lakeshore Drive. So, you know, it was a crazy time. And I was like, back to the drawing board. Like, the real world's too scary right now. I guess I'll go to law school, but I hadn't taken the LSAT. I hadn't been planning for it. So I was like a year behind. So I just was working retail for a bit, and then I went to Paris for a bit, and then I came back and went to Columbia.
Came back and went what?
Columbia.
Okay.
Law school.
So you did the LSAT. I guess you had good grades in college and stuff, because Columbia is a pretty good place to go for law school.
Yeah, sure.
Really? That's it? Well, I'm going to track it down. I mean, I'm guessing it's one of the top 5 law schools in the country. Yeah, sure. And when you went to law school, did you think you were going to specialize in any particular area of the law?
Oh, this is so crazy. So obviously, you know, like I said, I took like a gap year just because I didn't know what I was doing. I was in Paris, and I met a language exchange partner, and he was going to law school at the Sorbonne. And we were very good friends. And a couple of years later, after I was a lawyer, I went back to Paris, and I met up with him. And he's like, so are you saving third world debt now, like you said you would be? And I was like, oh, God, no. I was like, I don't even remember that person. Is that who I was when I talked to you? Like,
I'm helping companies do leverage buyouts or something. So when he asked that, what were you doing at the time?
I was at Gibson Dunn doing real estate M&A, and you know, so it was as far as possible. I have to take that back. I worked with there was a wonderful partner I worked with. He was he was a mensch, and he was a good mentor, and he had a tremendous practice, and he said, I'm going to spend like a huge percentage of my time doing pro bono, and I'm going to help keep like the character of the city the way it is. So I did some amazing pro bono. I helped Coney Island, USA buy their freak show building, and they were being assaulted by Thor Equities, wanted to buy it and turn it into a Nike town.
Oh, jeez.
Can you imagine? Is that what Brighton Beach needs? No. It needs crazy people and lots of Russian vodka and like a sword swallower. That's what that part of the city is supposed to be. And he was kind of the only shop in town that was like helping people who were kind of, oh my God, it was so hard to help them because like they broke all the rules all the time. They had these covenants with the city of like stuff they couldn't do. And it was like, I'd have to call them and be like, Dick, are you sleeping in the freak show again? You have to get back to your apartment. Like, it was just crazy. Or they'd show up at my office to drop off a paper. I'm like, do you guys know how like a fax or an attachment works?
Right.
And they'd be like, we thought you'd want to see the snake. And it'd be like this 20-foot white python. And I'd look, and like the receptionist would be like,
you're like, yeah,
hiding.
you're right. I did want to see the snake. So that's interesting to me. Some partner there is taking on all these pro bono things. And the other partners, I mean, it's a big white shoe firm, right? The other partners are okay with that?
Absolutely.
Because they're not billable hours, right?
That's correct. And he did a really great thing where like we helped the Robin Hood Foundation build some charter schools like in the Bronx and in Crown Heights in Brooklyn and stuff like that. And we had a great hybrid arrangement where we did the real estate acquisition, totally pro bono, but then when we did the financing, we got paid some portion on the financing. So he built a very thoughtfully sustainable practice. And then of course, when you do stuff for Robin Hood, you get to go to the Robin Hood dinner, and that's priceless advertising right there if you're in real estate in New York. So
right.
So yeah, he was very thoughtful and targeted in how he built his practice to make it sustainable to do all that pro bono. So yeah.
Sounds fabulous. So
great.
Why did you leave?
I mean, I had the best mentor in the world, and I still didn't love it. And I didn't feel like I was a great attorney. Like it's just hard. It's hard, and it takes a lot. You've got to be fully engaged in the practice, and that means like 80-hour weeks a lot of the time. And I just, I didn't have that fire in my gut. And, it was like, I gotta pax out of here. And then the 2008, so after the 01.com crash, then the 2008 real crash came.
Right.
And so there were no real estate jobs, no real estate work anywhere anyway. So I was unemployed for a year, Living
in New York City?
No, I gave up my apartment. My husband and I, well, he was my boyfriend at the time, but we were living in this crazy apartment. It was like a glass tower down on Bowery and Houston. It's just the most soulless garbage, Avalon, Bowery. Bleh. And we were paying like $6,000 or $7,000 a month for like this, it was just so dumb. And just before I got laid off, I was like, hey, if we're not going to get married, I'm going to move out. I'm going to get some other apartment. So I moved to this like crappy place. It was on the promenade in Brooklyn Heights, and it was Squibb of Bristol Myers Squibb old house. And it had a secret passage down to the waterfront where his laboratory was, and that went through our apartment. It was crazy. It was so cool. It was on the promenade, so it had like a backyard.
Sounds amazing.
And I was like, how is this only $1,800 a month? And the realtor was like, well, this is my bait and switch. He's like, you're not going to like it because the super goes through daily to like check the boiler. I was like, oh, how weird can that be? Like, I'll take it. Oh, it was so weird.
Because the super was weird, or
he was like a poltergeist. He had like milky eyes. So I was like, how can you even see to check the boiler? He had milky eyes and flowing blonde locks. And so that guy, and he would not knock. I was like, you don't even have to call in advance. Just knock so that I know not to be like walking between the bathroom and like whenever it happens.
Right.
He was like, I can't spare the time. I'm like, what? I was like, you live rent free on the promenade in Brooklyn Heights. you got nothing but time and real estate, buddy. Like just a knock. And he wouldn't. So then the crash happened and I lost that apartment. But in the meantime, my husband was like, oh, maybe we can't get married, but can I just move in with you for a while?
You lost the apartment with the poltergeist?
Well, I gave it up so then my husband followed.
But how long did you last there?
Oh, I think 6 or 8 months. It was a beautiful, beautiful apartment. It had meat hooks down below too, though, because it was the kitchen for
that's
this
nice.
mansion.
The previous tenants, yeah.
Yeah, so there were if you went down, there was a submarine door, and you'd twist this thing, and you could go down to a non-electrified floor. But if you took a torch down with you, you could see there were meat hooks hanging from the ceiling, and then the rest of the passage down to the water.
That's fucking creepy.
Yeah, exactly. And so
where did the passage put out on the water? And did the water ever come in the passage?
No, they had bricked it off to put the BQE in. So it dead ended, but it was pretty wild. And so then when I got laid off, I was like, well, I'm still not married. My husband, and he was at a hedge fund and he just made $1 bajillion and he was never going to quit his job. And I had no job. I was like, I don't want to be here. This is garbage. So I was like, peace out. I was like putting my stuff in boxes. You can have the apartment. Ciao. And I just went and traveled. And then the miracles of Facebook, he saw my posts of all the cool stuff I was doing. He was like, oh, maybe I will quit my job and join you. And then we got married. So
wow.
Yeah.
And so he quit his job to join you traveling around. Mm-hmm. And where were you going? What were the cool posts on Facebook?
Oh, gosh. I mean,
what years was this?
This was this was whenever the crash was.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, I was couch surfing. So it was not super glamorous. I have a friend in New York. He actually discovered the world's oldest brain. He and his friend were like the
Guest of the Year award goes to Dana Colleen Peterson. Wait, they discovered the world's oldest brain?
Yeah, they were.
Can you share a little bit about that?
So it was in York. He was in York. So it was not that glamorous. I was staying on his sofa in York, and he and his husband was a building conservator, and he was for the Crown. He worked for the Crown, making sure that as they built new parking garages, they didn't build over an important find. And so as he and his partner were kind of investigating the stuff that was brought up, there was a skull. It was well, we're not going to stop for a skull, but she's poking around on the inside and she's like, Jeff, what is this? And he reaches in and is like, it's a jelly bean. It was a brain. And so it's
a preserved brain.
It wasn't super preserved, but
it was brain enough.
It was brain enough. It's the oldest one they've ever found, or it was at the time. I don't keep up with this. I don't have a Google alert for older.
And this is in England, in York.
In York,
right,
where they were building a parking garage.
Garage.
Yeah. So that was I was just doing that. I was couch surfing with people all over. So my itinerary was about that. But then my husband was like, "Oh, I'm going to come too," and I was like, "Oh, now I have to get nice hotel rooms."
Couch surfing gets a lot more difficult with two.
Yeah, you can't in good conscience. So I was like, "Okay, we're going to have to." So I was in Lanzarote, and he met up with me, and we. And that's really cool. That's it's the lunar surface. It's a fully volcanic island with de minimis vegetation, and they have vineyards there. And the surface is like a pumice stone that you would, use in the shower, but softer. So anytime you touch, you can go up to a mountain, you're driving along, you think these mountains are way in the distance, but it's just a trick of the eye because it's such a weird texture. And you pull lift in the lay-by, and you go up and you kind of touch the mountain edge, and it just crumbles away. It's so wild. And they have vineyards where they scoop out little holes and they put one tiny vine in the center of the hole so that all the condensation will kind of funnel down to it because they get no rainfall.
Wow.
So he met up with me there and we traveled for a long time. We went to Morocco, we went to Singapore, we went to just Thailand, Rome, just all over.
Sounds dreamy. And how long did you guys do that for?
A year.
And he had quit his job. You said he was working for a hedge fund or something. Mm-hmm. And he's just like, to hell with it. I'd rather be with Dana Colleen.
He was ready to quit before that. It was just when the bonuses came through, it kind of popped his eyes for a moment. He's like, I guess I shouldn't leave just yet. And so then, he only came when he got super jealous. But yeah, he was ready to go. It's so stressful. These jobs that pay so much, the amount of stress and just, it's like being a quarterback, and people will frankly accept a quarterback has a a lifespan on their career of this many years, so they should earn as much as they can in this amount of time, but then they're spent and they're done, and it's, they're gonna have concussions and whatever. And like finance, much of finance that's like really intense is the same way. And some, for lawyers too, for some lawyers it can be like that too. Not at the level I was playing, but.
So eventually the two of you came back to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
And where did you land?
Good question. I don't remember.
Thanks.
We got engaged in Central Park, and I remember because I was getting the hotels every night of our stay. But then the one night he's like, "I got the hotel tonight," and I'm like, "That's weird." And then we got there, and he was very upset because he thought it was right on the park, but it was a block away. And I was like, "Well, who cares? I can walk a block. I'm not, no celebrity." And then we went to kind of our favorite pond, and he got very nervous and he proposed, and I said yes. And it was only afterwards that we realized that it was like just the two of us in this vacant pond, except for a homeless woman who was fully nude and bathing herself like 10 feet away from us. Like we were
New York City. It's so wonderful that way.
Yeah.
And so did he get down on one knee? And he somehow figured out your ring size? And
I don't remember. And the ring was too big, and I ended up losing it because we were still traveling. We weren't even back. We went to Germany. I think I lost it in Paris or something, so I had to get a replacement. So.
You're still traveling, so you just passed through New York, staying in hotels.
Yeah. When we came back, I don't remember where I guess we went back to. We went to Park Slope. We just took an apartment in Park Slope for a little bit, and then he was working in a new hedge fund, and then I got a job at a small law firm that I hated, and then very quickly moved up to. Greenberg Traurig, and then just back in the swing of it. But then I did a startup.
Back in the swing in terms of it being corporate law stuff.
Yeah,
okay.
Same old.
And then you did a startup.
And it and it crashed and burned so badly.
Really? What was the startup?
Oh, it was not that the startup was a bad idea. It was that my partner was just not above board, and I ended up having to sue to get out of there.
Oh no!
I was stupid and young, and it was really important to me to keep my good name and make it clear that I didn't, condone or do whatever. And I spent so much money on that litigation, and for what? For nothing. I've learned now my Sun Tzu Art of War. I just would kneecap at the first shot now if anyone came at me like that again. I wouldn't play nice. I wouldn't go to the courts. I was very disillusioned as a lawyer. I was like, wow, going to the courts Kafka was onto something. This is not, the panacea I thought it would be.
Right. Now you say kneecap, you mean you would kneecap them, sort of like Jeff Galooly. Did to Nancy Kerrigan.
Oh, look at this 90s. I love it.
All of which happened in the 90s. Yes. Don't jump my segue, Missy. And that brings us to your show here on RadioFreeRhinecliff.org, which is that 90s show. We actually called Hot 90s at 9, but it's on at 8 when it's on.
It's streaming, so it's on whenever, but okay.
Yeah. And I listened to a couple of episodes.
Thank you.
To prepare for this. It's so much fun.
Oh, thank you.
And one of the delights of it is the 90s music, but the chit chat about current events and political stuff. It's really a great show, and I encourage everybody to go to RadioFreeRhinecliff.org and check out the 90s show. Where the hell did the inspiration for that come from?
Well, while I was working on this book, and I kind of was jumping back into the 90s, and I was saying to myself, I was like, the impetus for my book, for Interregnum, was I was sitting there one day, I was like, oh, if only I could go back and tell myself to buy more toilet paper, something very mundane and stupid. And I started wondering, I was like, how far back would you have to go if you wanted to just stop the pandemic? Not stop it. Let's assume every 100 years you get an outbreak of epic proportions, and Spanish flu was 1918. We're probably due, but we could have handled it less disastrously. But
there's still one point somewhere, where it begins. And
sure.
Did you see Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure? I think that was 90s as well.
Yes, I did do, and that would be a really fun thing to do. But that would also be kind of a different feel. And I kind of was just like, what would you have to fix how poorly we responded as a nation, right? Like, how far back do you have to go to make sure that we haven't dismantled our early warning CDC overseas structure? How far back do you have to go to make sure we haven't given away our PPE to China? How far back do you have to go to ensure that we have some kind of safety net in place so that we can have, like, I don't know, even just a 2-week pause at the beginning to just kind of like, a circuit breaker stop. And so I was going through that and, being, kind of like a Gore Vidal, gaze at my navel, kind of, considering myself some kind of public intellect. I was like, how far back would you
Well, you
really
are
have
now
to?
on the
Yes,
right
now
here on this
I am.
radio show.
Thank you. And I was going back and I was like, how far back would you have to go? And I kind of got to this thing. I was like, well, gosh, I'd want to stop 9/11 because I feel like that was a big fracturing point where briefly everyone felt like, oh, America came together for that. But, it also wasn't that. It also was kind of immediately into kind of like this split of, oh, well, they let it happen on purpose. They made it happen on purpose. Kind of we started getting kind of branches that were really bad. I think that, and then we started this war that, $2.7 trillion and 20 years later, we leave with our shoulders bent and not much worse, not much better than we left Vietnam. And so, so I was like, well, I'd go back to stop 9/11. Then I was like, well, how far would I have to go back to stop 9/11? And then I was like, well, you need a couple of years. And then I thought, what if when I traveled back in time, I was stuck in the body I had at that time? And I was like, who's going to listen to a 10-year-old in 1990? Right. So
that's hilarious.
So it's, and I love Stranger Things. I think it's a really fun show.
So good.
I love the nostalgia. Mm-hmm.
Did you say that some part of this you tied to the book you're working on now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And tell me again, what is the...
So the whole and I mean, like, I shouldn't even be treating it like, oh, let me tell you, because if I ever sold this book, it'd take like years for it to come out. But the whole premise is like, going back to 1990 and kind of getting to relitigate the decade and look at it again.
Going back to 1999, I didn't get that. Well, so that's wonderful. And so now you're doing this 90s show, which must be helpful. You do a little bit of research for it.
Oh,
must
hugely. They go hand in hand. That's why I'm doing the show, is because it helps me get back into that place and remember what life was like. It's really wild to remember, like, what it was like before there was like a house phone. If my kids could have a house phone and call their friends on their
forget
house
about
phones,
it.
oh my God.
And have to pick up the phone and not know who was calling.
Exactly. Wild, right? We all did that. Can you believe? Oh my God.
So you said you were 10 in 1990? Mm-hmm. Okay. So the 90s, 10 to 20, super formative years. Mm-hmm. And you play music from the 90s. Mm-hmm. You don't sort of talk about the history of the 90s as much.
Not too much, yeah.
And what are some of your who are some of your favorite bands from the 90s? Or who was your favorite band in 1990, and who do you think the favorite band was in 1999 or 2000?
God, I'm sure in 1990 it was like something stupid like New Kids on the Block or something. I'm sure. I love Tori Amos a lot during the early part, but I also listened to a lot of 70s music. And in the 90s, 70s were big. There was like a retro 70s feel. Led Zeppelin. Oh, I burned up so much of my Columbia Music CD thing on like that 4 CD set.
All right, now you bring this up on the show, the Columbia Music thing. Did you actually sign up for that?
Oh, absolutely.
Because you could get like 10 albums for like $1 or something. Mm-hmm.
And I had a friend who did an arbitrage thing where he got a bunch of post office boxes and made up pseudonyms and had like multiple Columbia House and BMG subscriptions and stuff.
And yet somehow they still made money on that.
Did they? Do you still hear about them today? I don't know.
Well, nobody's buying CDs now, are they? Or vinyl or cassette tapes or 8 tracks, which is, they were trafficking that stuff. Now,
that's right. They did. They had 8 tracks.
You get a download. And did you have 8 tracks?
In my dad's boat. My dad has a boat that's older than I am. It's a family jet boat from 1972.
A family jet boat?
That's so dangerous.
That sounds like an oxymoron or a paradox.
It's so fast and it's so powerful and like
dangerous.
Oh yeah, and my dad is a pretty good mechanic, so he keeps it together with like duct tape and Moxie. But
did he buy it new?
I don't think so. My dad's never bought anything new in his life.
Okay, well, what's the name of the boat?
It's a Glastron. It's a 1972 family jet.
No, but the name of the boat has a name, right?
I forget. I don't know.
Like the Mary Beth or the...
Oh, no.
Marianne or the Ginger.
No, he wasn't sentimental. He was duct tape and Moxie. That was it. There's no name on it.
Okay, but don't most boats have names?
I mean, you're not legally required to have a name on it. You're legally required to have like a alphanumeric. I think he named it after my stepmom in recent years, but it spent most of its life not having a name. So
okay, I see. And he still hasn't. Where is this boat? When's the last time you were out on it?
Like last summer, but he takes it out on like lakes in central Pennsylvania, down at the dam, Chevy to the levee, and you stick the boat in the water. Yep. Yeah, you ride around and you water ski and stuff like that. So.
Sounds like a blast.
Yeah, it is.
And you have siblings?
I have a younger brother, and he's itinerant right now too. He's doing his gap year as he travels.
He's itinerant too.
Yeah,
I thought you lived.
No, now I'm here, but I had my gap year where I traveled. He's having his gap year where he travels now. So he just got through a terrible, ridiculous divorce, and he's just traveling. He's doing his thing. He's going to the Arctic Circle in October and traveling all over. Yeah,
sounds amazing. And one of the things that people told me, I asked everybody, I'm like, hey, I'm interviewing Dana Colleen. Everybody's like, oh my God, she's hilarious. It's going to be so much fun. But also everybody said, well, she's really very political and very much of a Democrat. Mm-hmm. Are your political views the same as your folks and the same as your brother?
Well, I haven't always been a Democrat. I grew up in central Pennsylvania, and if you want to have a voice that matters in order to vote in the only primary that matters, you have to be a Republican. So when I grew up as a kid, everyone I knew was Republican just in order to cast a vote when it mattered in the primary. Pennsylvania's changed a lot since then. I no longer think that's the case. But when I was a kid, I was an intern in the office of Governor Tom Ridge, who was the first Homeland Security Secretary.
I remember.
So, yeah. So, I mean, like, I've done some time in the trenches on the other side, but essentially, I feel like in a different time when the stakes were not so clear, I could be one of those people who falls into the like, well, I'm socially liberal but fiscally conservative, and I could fall on the other side, but it's just not possible right now in good conscience to kind of split that baby in that direction.
Socially liberal, fiscally conservative, that's almost every New York hedge fund guy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that your husband?
Mm-hmm. He's even more liberal than I am in some ways. Like, I was like, oh, let's have a wedding in a church. And he's like, churches won't marry gay people. Like, how could you? I was like, okay, fine. And so we did the Brooklyn Society for Ethical Culture. But, so we're both super liberal on certain things, but we're both frustrated and kind of have like essentially like, I wouldn't say conservative, but I feel like sometimes you can villainize things because you don't understand them. And I think regulation of the financial systems is sometimes kind of like fraught with witch hunt ideas that are more powerful than the underlying understanding of the mechanisms in place.
It kind of defines like the way most people interact with politics.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah. So I think like, I've been voting Democrat for a long time, but, and I'm very progressive on a lot of things. But essentially, I think of myself as kind of a homeless moderate. And I wish we weren't in an era when kind of the fringe is pulling both parties away from the center. It's more true on the Republican side than it's true on the Democrat side. But, certainly there are things that come up where I'm like, what? Why is this what we're focusing on? Like, let's stick with, And then I'll hear Mark Molinaro be like, kitchen table arguments. I'm like, I mean, I not you, but I do agree. Like, it would be nice to be able to focus on things that are kind of core and central. And there is a value to not shaking things up just for the sake of shaking them up. I like to see things shaken up when it's appropriate, when it, serves the greater good and justice, but to just willy-nilly tear things apart, sometimes I'm like, why are we running these circles?
You don't think somebody on an extreme, shaking things up on an extreme end, whether it's left or right, helps to move the center in that direction?
Oh, certainly.
And that's...
Yeah, and there, one thing a friend of mine and I were arguing, and, I no longer do very much of Facebook, but for a while it was like all of my law school friends who were really, really, like thoughtful, good, intelligent people, and we would have meaningful arguments. That Facebook's gone; it's no longer there. But I remember one time my friend was like, "Oh, like so are you like if we didn't have the far left pooling, we never would have achieved XYZ for trans rights, for example." And then I say, well, with the Supreme Court going the way it's gone, and that's due to kind of, the Republicans towing the line and voting together in order to consolidate power at all levels of the judiciary, those rights that we fought for, they will disappear. They
are disappearing,
yeah,
right?
exactly. And, you look, and some people are very quick to point out, like, loving v. Virginia. How come Clarence Thomas didn't, mention that?
Clarence Thomas, also the 90s, Anita Hill. Yeah.
I know. I'm a big fan of packing the court.
I was going to ask.
Oh, absolutely. I think there should be so many people on the court that no one knows who's who anymore, and it's just not like they pull a certain number of people to hear a case.
All right. What are the arguments against packing the court that you just think are bullshit?
It's never been done. It's cheating. But
it has been, right?
Yes. I mean,
Mitch McConnell would do that shit in a heartbeat.
I know. I am tired of bringing a butter knife to an Uzi fight.
Yes.
That's what makes me upset.
Why do the Democrats seem to do that over and over again?
Like I said, I can't even stand to watch.
Blood pressure going through the roof. Have another drink. Yeah. So do you ever think about maybe becoming a politician yourself?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely. Was there 2 words there?
There were 2. Absolutely not. Oh my God. I can't think of anything worse to wish on anyone than to be on the campaign trail. It's
horrible. I can't imagine.
It's the only job out there where there are really 2 jobs, and the job interview is a completely different job than the job you're supposed to be doing. And I think like legislative acumen and kind of managing constituents and managing messaging and expectations, it only narrowly dovetails with the kind of glad handing you have to do. And too many people demand too much and won't vote for someone whose, views don't 100% intersect with theirs. I've literally never voted for anyone whose views 100% intersect with mine.
Right.
Because it's just not possible. And the fact that so many people are willing to throw away the good because they'll never have the perfect, I would literally, my head would pop off of my body if I had to go on a campaign trail.
Well, I'm with you on that. I don't have the constitution for that kind of stuff, or the tact, or whatever. Very interesting. All right, we've got a couple minutes left. I want to just swing it back around to the 90s because I had so much fun looking into that because of your show. First off, how often is your show on? Not often enough, I think.
I know it's hard because both Kate and I have to be available, and we both have kids.
And who's Kate? She's your partner.
Kate Cox, yeah, and she's we have a great rapport together, and
you do
kind of challenge each other. She listens to music that I didn't really hear, and I love a lot more trashy mainstream stuff that she's never touched. And
mainstream stuff like what?
Trashy mainstream, like, oh God, I don't know. Like I played, I don't know. So there's some garbage I played on this last one that was like,
Cyndi Lauper or Madonna.
No, that's totally fine. Like just some of these like emo whiny boy band stuff. Where she's like, oh really? Is this what we're doing? And then she'll listen to like some legit stuff and she'll suggest it. I'll be like, who is this? Bush band or whatever, and it's like, oh, so she's important for the legitimacy, and I'm important for like the top 40 aspect of it.
Nice. What a lovely duo. So it's dependent on when you guys can get together.
Yeah, and hopefully now that summer's over, and we both had COVID, like not at the same time, so we had COVID gaps for both of us, and then we had summer vacations, but in the fall now, man, bringing it back hard, weekly. Let's go for it.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, once again, I want to tell my 8 listeners to go online, radiofreerancliffe.org, and track down that 90s show because it's really fun to listen to you two.
Thank you.
So when you think about the 90s and when you look back on it from where you are now, what are some of the non-political defining moments? Because I looked this up on Wikipedia, all the moments of the 90s. and I've got my answer ready.
Oh, geez. Oh, gosh. Well, I think oh, Lord, there's just too much. I'm too deep in it. I remember the Lewinsky scandal. I remember only because of 9/11, I think the bombing in February 93 of the World Trade Center.
Right.
Obviously, the Oklahoma City bombing was kind of a big moment. I think that really knocked people back on their heels to be like, one of our own,
right?
Like a soldier could turn on us. That was a bit weird, different. Obviously, the school shootings. And it's that scares me more than anything else, because the more I go down that rabbit hole as I do research, Columbine wasn't the first. And then I found the one that I thought was the first. And then I found another one that was earlier. And it's like, how are these things happening? And like, I don't even have a solid memory of them. It makes me kind of distrust like the flow of time. It's like, did I really not know that Paducah, Kentucky happened? Like, did I really not know about any of these until Columbine? And Columbine was like a big moment. And I remember feeling so relieved that I was out of high school at that point. And I was like, oh, because, there's nothing worse than being the nerd and like the bullies and the jackasses are in control of your day and your life. And it's like,
Yeah, the bros, as they say now. Now, what's coming up in the future for you? I think you've got some sort of fundraiser or something happening.
For sure. I hope everyone will come to the September 10th fundraiser for Planned Parenthood. It's the Rhinebeck fundraiser, but it's going to be up in Germantown. They do that sometimes.
Which, let me just stump for them, an amazing organization. They do so many things. In addition to providing reproductive rights services, they do so many health services, and not just for women, but for everybody, and for people who can't find these services elsewhere.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a spectacular organization. So September 10th, there's a fundraiser in Germantown. And if people wanted to find out about that, where would they go?
We'll have to give them a link on radiofreebrindcliffe.org, because I think it's plannedparenthood.org/a/Rhinebeck PNG 2022. Oh gosh, I should have.
I'm going to remember that.
It needs a tiny URL, but no, they're tremendous. And I was an itinerant vagabond for 2 different periods of my professional life, and in those periods,
do you still have any business cards left from that era?
I bet I do, and I'll find one for you and show it to you.
All right, good.
But I went to Planned Parenthood for like my wellness exams, and there is just such a huge hole in our healthcare system and our infrastructure. And if they weren't stepping forward, this whole world would be a terrible place. So we need them more than ever.
And how did you get involved?
I just, we have a couple charities that we always do. So we do Robin Hood, we do Planned Parenthood, we do Union of Concerned Scientists that battles climate change. We have a couple others that Médecins Sans Frontières. So Planned Parenthood has always been on my docket, just because, they've helped me at times when I was not really yet a fully functioning adult and kind of needed that assist to get my exams for the year done. And, it is just such a wonderful, wonderful place. And I used to live on Bleecker Street near one of their New York City offices. And I remember I'd go to get the subway in the morning. I'd go past that one lone picketer, and he had a really outdated sign that was, I think it was supposed to be a chopped up baby after a DNC or whatever, but it looked like ravioli. And I remember thinking, like, this is the least effective anti-abortion message I've ever seen. Because all I'm thinking right now is like, oh man, Chef Boyardee ravioli.
Right.
Remember that? Like, that was all I would think.
Marinara or
yeah.
Yeah, well, it's so interesting the way the different polarized factions interact with that. But Planned Parenthood is not really very political. They're just helping out people in need.
No.
And so that's September 10th in Germantown. Go to plannedparenthood.com or our website and figure out that.
Yeah.
And we're out of time. It has flown by.
Like the license plate on the DeLorean says, out of time.
Out of time.
That's 84. Oh my God. I made an 80s reference.
Yeah, that's not. We can cut that out in post. Thanks for bringing the Eric Estrada. It was delightful. Everybody have a happy Friday. My guest has been Dana Colleen Peterson, the best. Yet another person I wish could talk to again for another hour. Maybe you'll come back.
Oh, sure, if you'll have me.
Yeah, I'll have you. You got to do more 90s shows right here on Radio Free Rhinecliff.
Yeah.
And, one last thing. It's First Friday here in Rhinecliff, and come on down because there is the First Friday party and dinner to benefit the Fireman's Field and the work that they want to do there.
Wonderful.
Thank you, Dana. Have a great weekend.
Thank you, Norm.
Bye.